War is afoot.
Hello and welcome back to Beyond the Dragon, a brand new video series from radiotimes.com in which we'll be chatting all things House of the Dragon. Now, episode 1 is out there. You've had a chance to see it. If you haven't, leave now. This is a spoiler-heavy discussion. First things first, David, what did you think of episode 1?
Well, I think it was a very strong start to this series. It was very much more in line with the earlier episodes of Game of Thrones than the more divisive and controversial final couple of seasons. It was a little bit slower than I was maybe expecting. I feel like there weren't any humongous big battles and developments in this episode, but it was doing the job of setting up the characters, introducing the key figures in this series. That said, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more from some people, such as Eve Best as Rhaenys Targaryen. I feel like she was set up to be like quite a big player in this series, and so far haven't seen very much from her. Also Corlys, we've seen him on the council, but don't really know a huge deal about what he's about. But I'm sure that's all going to come in future episodes. This is kind of the calm before the storm, and you can definitely feel a lot of tension brewing underneath. What about you, Abby? What did you think of this episode?
I thought it was a really solid opening episode. I thought it looked great. They've clearly got a lot more money to play with than they did in the earlier seasons of Game of Thrones here. They're utilising that really well. I thought it was a great establishing episode, setting up all the key players, drawing those key battle lines, and I thought we left the first episode in a really interesting place. There's lashings of tension there, and we're primed and ready to go for what's next, so really looking forward to what else lies in this series.
So let's talk now about some of the big moments in House of the Dragon episode 1. Now, a key character in this chapter was King Viserys, who we meet in the 9th year of his reign. And this is a character from George R.R. Martin's expanded universe who is very much viewed as something of an ineffectual ruler. You know, we see in this episode that he seems very easily kind of swayed and manipulated by the council around him. And of course, we don't even know how long Viserys is going to last for because of that horrible infected wound on his back, which just really made me cringe. I hate that kind of gore. And funnily enough, he is not the first ruler to have suffered on the Iron Throne. I mean, this was a chair that was designed to be uncomfortable. And indeed, the final Targaryen king before Robert Baratheon took over, Mad King Aerys II, was known by some as King Scab because of all the little cuts and marks that he endured while sitting on the throne. It's not a comfortable seat. We don't like it.
It's not, and we see Viserys cut his own finger on that throne, and legend has it that means he's a cursed man. And of course, in the first episode, it looks like that curse has already taken hold. Viserys was dealt a double blow. Not only did he lose his wife, Emma, during childbirth, he also lost his newborn son as well, who was set to be the heir and sit on the Iron Throne when the time came. It was a difficult moment to stomach for both Viserys and viewers as well.
And how did you feel, Abby, about the way that scene was depicted in the show?
I think violence is an important part of Game of Thrones, but it's knowing how to show it and when, and I think that was an incredibly graphic scene. I personally thought it was too graphic. They could have scaled it back. We didn't need to see the knife going in. I think, it raises questions about Game of Thrones' propensity for brutality, particularly against its female characters. Is it moving the story along, or is it voyeuristic and gratuitous? And for me, that particular scene lent more into the latter there.
And of course, it wasn't the only gory scene in this episode. We also saw Prince Daemon brutalizing the residents of King's Landing with his city watch. Now, I actually felt this particular scene wasn't as bad in comparison as the birth scene because it was so over the top that it almost seemed a little bit silly at times, a little bit kind of tongue-in-cheek. But I think it did serve the purpose of setting up Prince Daemon as this really nasty force to be reckoned with. And we see at one point in this episode, a member of King Viserys' council says that he cannot be king under any circumstances because he would be a second Maegor. And Maegor, to readers of George R.R. Martin's book, will be known as a very cruel Targaryen king who was completely sadistic and loved violence and murder and was eventually turned on by his own people, impaled on the Iron Throne. Another grisly story to do with that darn chair.
So every week we are going to be picking our head of the house, our favourite character of the week. David, I'm interested to hear who was the standout or most interesting personality for you?
Well, I mentioned this in our previous episode. I'm very interested in the character of Sir Criston Cole, and I think he made a great first impression here. I mean, we were just talking now about how Prince Daemon is a nasty piece of work, and so I loved to see him get his comeuppance at the tourney. Seeing Sir Criston Cole beat him up with a mace, no less, one of the coolest medieval weapons, was just such a thrill, and I think Prince Daemon totally deserved it. But I'm curious, Abby, who's your head of the house for this week?
I'm going to differ to you, David, and I'm going to say Daemon. While he is extremely violent and unlikable in places, I think he is a lot of fun. He's got that chaos merchant energy, which I think the show needs. He reminded me of Loki, actually, and maybe it is the long hair and that Asgardian-esque helmet that he wears, but I just thought he was a lot of fun. And while there are aspects of his character that are deeply unlikable, extremely dark, I think we also see shades of vulnerability there. I don't think he enjoys being at loggerheads with his brother or his niece. Their relationship has raised some eyebrows already, make of that what you will. But I think we are going to see a very flawed, ergo human character there. And that's been spoken about a lot by the creators and the cast, the fact that there aren't going to be any out-and-out heroes or villains here. All of the characters are going to do things that you don't like and also support and behave in ways that you root for. So it's Prince Daemon for me this week.
Well, Abby, we're going to have to agree to disagree on that one for now, but I am interested to see how Prince Daemon evolves and indeed which new characters emerge over the coming weeks. So that wraps up this episode of Beyond the Dragon. Thank you very much for watching. Of course, you can tune into House of the Dragon. It airs on Mondays on Sky Atlantic, first at 2 a.m, then again at 9. And of course, you can watch at any time on the streaming service now. We'll be back next week with all of our gossip and thoughts on the next episode of House of the Dragon. We hope to see you then. Goodbye for now.
See you soon.